Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teen Talks. Susan and I are here. We're excited. Today we're going to be talking about having control over your teenager. Coming from me, as someone who just came out of his teenagers, I do not like that. I don't like it when my parents, or anyone for that matter, has control over me. But I also understand that it is necessary at times. So we're going to have a conversation about it. And we're also going to have a conversation about, is it healthy? We're going to ask ourselves, is it healthy? Is it healthy for the teen when parents have a bit of control over them? And also, is it healthy for the parents? So, Susan, from the get-go, I want to ask you a question.
Oh boy.
Have there been, pressure's on. Have there been any instances that you can remember where you as a parent, especially when your kids were in their teenagers, you felt like you had to step in and make decisions for them that they were not able to make at that time, and you decided to take that step and say, you know what, I have to have control over this situation, so I'm going to decide for them?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear the lawnmower?
I can't hear anything. You're all good.
The lawnmower's going behind me. Yes, let's see. I'm sure there were many times where I felt like I needed to step in. The interesting thing about when my kids, so my oldest, I have 3 kids, and my oldest one is 6 years older than the next 2. So the oldest one, he was pretty responsible. I didn't have to worry about him too much. He wasn't into the drinking scene or doing anything. He's pretty straight-laced. He was in the IB program, which is International Baccalaureate program at high school, with all the nerdy kids.
Yeah.
So for him, he made pretty good decisions. I didn't really have to intervene too much. I felt comfortable with his friends and all that. Now, 6 years later, I have the next one and the next one, 2 years apart. And they were not in the IB program. They were not driven like the older one. The other one was just really driven, one of those type A, firstborn, driven kids. Then we go middle and youngest. And I would have to push them to do things. I would have to come along and, make them do their homework and get them out of bed so they could get to school on time and not miss the bus for the zillionth time and that kind of stuff. And as they became teenagers, some of their friend choices were a little bit, most were good, but there were a few in there. And then they started partying, and more so than I knew.
Yeah.
Took after mom, I guess. Found out things later afterwards, but so I would try to somewhat control their environment of who they were hanging out with. But they were also, I was divorced when they were 12 and 14. So there was a lot of really hard stuff going on because their dad wasn't really watching them when they were with him, and they were with me. I was more so I would have to be the one who would go, what's happening when you're at your dad's house? Because dad didn't care. Dad just let them do whatever they wanted to because he'd take off. And so I know things were going on there that probably shouldn't have been. So I would try a little bit to see if I could control that.
And were there instances where you felt like you should have stepped in, or you should have had more control, or were you more open to just giving them their freedom and experience it themselves?
Those times when they were left alone and I knew they were bringing friends over to the house and doing things they probably shouldn't be doing. I wish I could have had more control then. As far as when they were with me and doing things, I tried to be more open. and let them, I'd question them and go,
Yeah.
is that really what you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Or when Jillian, I probably shouldn't have said her name. When my daughter wrecked the car, she got in
Yeah.
a car accident, flipped the car because she was driving too fast, and totaled it. And she was, thank God, okay, although she still has back pain to this day. Was now she lost her ability to drive, and I had a lot of control there because she didn't have a car anymore,
Yeah.
and she chose to speed and get some tickets, and then she had no driver's license for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had control there.
Yeah. And just like, I guess from my experiences, I obviously, just because of the nature of, like, I guess my upbringing, I had quite a bit of freedom. Like, I didn't have to tell my parents everything, and things like that. But there have been instances where I've felt, this might not be like my parents explicitly telling me you have to do this, but I've felt that, I felt times where there are instances where, not just generally like my parents, but anyone who's maybe older than me will tell me that they know best and that I should do things the way that they think, is best. And even though, I feel like there's another way to do it and that I want to try out, that I want to explore, I'll almost give in just because I feel that pressure in some way. And for me, even though I am making that decision to give in and everything, it does feel like they had some control over me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And coming from my perspective, is I know exactly, like, in those moments, the way I'd feel was that I just want to try. I was almost in my head, I was like, I want to fail. Like, I want to try something, and if it fails, then I want to fail that way, right? But I want to experience it myself.
And so did you feel like your parents were trying to keep you from having to go through failure, maybe?
So that's one way to put
Because
it.
they know best.
And then again, like, it wasn't like just with my parents. And in fact, maybe my parents they would do it a bit less, just because, ultimately I did have a lot of control over my own situation. But it was just kind of in general how adults would, make me feel, whether that would be coaches, mentors, etc. And I think at a young age I developed a strong sense of self-trust, which inevitably just meant that I trusted myself so much to the point where I was okay making decisions for myself and being like, you know what, if I do fail, that's okay. I'm going to be able to pick myself up. And I think, yes, some people might not have seen it that way, and that's why they wanted to maybe protect me. And maybe they've been through those mistakes, so they don't want me to go through them because they've already been through them, they've learned from them, and they don't want me to go through it. Which, again, I can come back to the argument and give something else where, different times I'm not them either. I'm a different person. So maybe I will do things differently. Maybe I'll experience it differently.
Right.
So there's a lot of back and forth, at least like from my point of view, because ultimately, I mean, obviously we want our freedom, right? And in fact, my dad and I, we talk about this quite often. Like, the one thing that I think human beings want is freedom in life in general. Time freedom, financial freedom, choice. We want to have choice, right? Free will, all that stuff. And I think that's the same for teenagers. And when they don't have that choice, then that's when they rebel. That's when they fight back.
Right. And I think from a parent's point of view, all of us, the majority of parents want to keep their kids safe. Their safety is the utmost importance. And so oftentimes we try to control to keep them safe, because we don't want anything bad to happen to our kids. So we're going to control the situation to make sure that nothing bad happens. But that can be a big mistake, I think, when, yes, you got to make sure they're not going to get physically hurt. Like, they're going to fall off the cliff, or they're not, not going to drive 100 miles an hour and get in a wreck, that kind of stuff. But then there are times where they're not going to learn unless they experience the consequences themselves. And so, we can tell them all day, I did this, this is what happened. I did this, this is what happened. They're like, oh, come on, mom. And you know what? Fine. As long as you know that they're not going to be physically hurt or mentally destroyed, let them go. Let them do it. And as hard as it is, I think it's the healthiest thing to do is just to hold back and let them do it. And they get the consequence of whatever they happens.
Yeah. And you're talking about them being safe. What that made me think of was like career path and career path choice. People have this idea of like, there's a safe route, which would be going to college or going to school, getting a degree, then getting a job, having a secure income, all that stuff. The unsafe path, which is more of a risky path, I guess, is where you go off on your own and you just try to figure things out, whether if you're pursuing professional sports, entrepreneurship, or any sort of thing like that, where you're kind of just going out on your own. Does the same thing apply there, do you think, when it comes to wanting them to be safe? Because I can kind of see it from that perspective of a parent might not want their kid to explore the riskier route because they want their kid to have that safety, to be okay, and to have that certainty that they're going to be okay. So what do you think about that?
So that's really good thing to bring up, because I sort of mentioned this before, but all three of my kids, I went to college, their dad went to college, my parents went to college. It's like, you're going to college. This is something set in stone. We have been saving money since you were born, so you're going to college. And I kind of second guess that now. I mean, I think definitely it's a good thing to go, yes, I'm saving money for you to go to college, and offer that as a gift, but not force it. Because it doesn't work for everybody. And then times have changed too. Because when I was young, going to college was your safety net to, I'm going to be able to get a good job, right? There was no other way. Otherwise you're going to just be a blue collar worker. You're never going to make a lot of money and blah, 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 blah. I don't believe that anymore. I do believe that there are certain occupations that, yes, you need college for. I do believe that college does give you perseverance and resilience to keep going, to complete something. And it's a valuable experience as far as socially and all that stuff. And just learning how to keep yourself on task and learn how to study and that kind of stuff is, life skills. But I do think making it an absolute for your child, I don't think is healthy anymore. Because I think my daughter struggled a little more and it wasn't necessarily her path. She learned a lot, but I don't think it really she actually ended up changing to a different program within the school because she didn't like learning the traditional way. And so they had this really out there program where you could learn differently and all that. And it was perfect for her. But
and is there like how much control or influence, because it's a big choice. I mean, it's your teen's life, right? It's their future. How much control and influence should parents have when it comes to that decision of what they want to do in the future? Should it be completely up to the teen, or should it be a mutual decision, or should it be heavily influenced by the parents? Is there a rule when it comes to that? Like, what are your thoughts when it comes to
like I said, I used to think there was the rule that college was the best way to go. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that, yes, if you have the means to make the opportunity available to them, yes. But I think if they're really, it's not their heart to go to college, it's not their personality, it's just not something they want,
Yeah.
that you support what it is they want. That, you know, you go, all right, if you're going to go this other direction and you want to pursue this and you're going to give it your all, and that's what you really is your passion or what you care about, or the way you want to go, I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you
Does
can say, oh, I
there,
saved that money for college, so now I'll give
yeah.
it to you if you do this or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I don't
And does it, let's say, this is just hypothetical. Let's say someone does take that other route, the unsafe, right? The riskier route, and it doesn't necessarily work out.
know.
And they come back home and they're like, I don't know what to do anymore. Then what happens? Because I've heard stories where the parents are like, you made that choice, you have to deal with it. Right? But there are situations where, there are 35-year-olds who, are still living with their parents because their parents are okay with them staying at home. What
See, that's
do you
a
think
tough
of
one
that?
because you love your kids, and you know, I mean, of course, I'm not going to say, actually, both of my kids moved back for a little bit of time after college, or actually one had to take a break from college because they were going in the wrong direction. So it was like, no, you're not, if you're going to party instead of study or, actually learn, then you're not ready. So he took a year off. I would always accept my kids to come back for a period of time, but I don't think it's healthy. I wouldn't force them out. It's a tough one. I don't think it's healthy for a child to live with their parents until they're in their 30s or even late 20s.
Yeah.
Unless they're dealing with some sort of mental or physical problem that they need help with. That's different. But in that way, I would probably put pressure to find a job and do your own thing and get out there. Maybe I'll get you on your feet, but no.
Yeah.
Because it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Nothing
I get
comes
that.
out of doing nothing.
I get that. It's like there comes a time where it almost has to be tough love, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
And that's when you
Has to be
talk
tough
about
love.
control. There is that kind of tough love
Yeah.
that is not, it's almost like not controlling because you're just holding up boundaries and saying, no, you got to do this.
Yeah.
Or no, you can't do this because it's yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a fine line between guiding and controlling. I think you can guide people, right? You can guide your teens to follow a certain sort of path, but ultimately they're the ones making the decisions. But on the other hand, if you're controlling them, then you're making the decisions for them. And
they don't.
I've used this analogy before, the bowling alley, right? Of they're like the ball, they're rolling, and you almost just have to be those bumpers that are keeping them out of the gutter.
Yeah.
And they're gonna hit
Because you use those bumpers all the time, right?
I'm not the best bowler, so
yeah, I think we did talk about this before. But it's true.
I think and then it's safe to say that they'll end up hitting a few pins, right? So
yeah,
you don't want to be the one throwing the ball. You want to be the one guiding it.
Yeah.
So exactly. Let them make the decision, and then you'll be there for them if they need it, and you'll be there to help them and guide them and support them, right? Yeah. At least that's the way I see it. That would be like an ideal sort of situation. Now, are there any tools or ways of thinking or things to do for any of the parents who might be out there who are like, I want to take more of a guidance position rather than a controlling position? Like, what are some things that parents can do to start kind of, looking at it that way?
I think it all comes back to the thing we've talked about many times is relationship. And the relationship that you have with your teen. Connection. And if you have that, you're going to have a more open conversation. They're going to tell you what they're feeling, and you're going to tell them what you think about that. You're going to they're going to feel like you're on their team.
Yeah.
That you're not doing this. You're saying, I support you in whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to stay safe. I will help you.
Yeah.
And unless you have that relationship, that's where the problems come in. That's where miscommunication happens. That's where if you're up here and they're down here, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You got to come together and be on the same,
Yeah.
you know. And that's what I would say is the most important thing as a parent, is to build that relationship with connection and empathy and listening and no judgment. And then I think it all comes together.
Mm.
And you guide instead of control.
Yeah.
You guide instead of force or say, this is the way you're going to go. You guide them instead to what they want.
Yeah.
Because they're not a mini you.
Yeah. And also, like, that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. And there are two things that I want to say really quickly. You know, I feel like some parents, and this could be true, this could be false, but I feel like some parents, what ends up happening is they almost want to live through their kids in some way, or they'll try and instill like their beliefs of like when they were growing up and things like that into their kids. And that influences the relationship a lot. And you hear it as well, like, you, when I was your age, blah 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 blah, right? So there are little things like that, I think as well, where you're comparing yourself to them, and almost
Yeah.
understanding like you're two completely different people, right?
Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. And coming from like my perspective, it's not something that you like you enjoy hearing. If a parent
Yeah.
is if your own parent is telling you, you know, when I was your age, I was doing this, this, this. When I was your age, I was already here, here, here. That it's almost like, it's like you feel like you're being put down, right, in some way. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's there's a fine line there too, because you almost have to, and we talked about this before, you have to be careful like what you say to your
Right.
kids, because you don't know how that's going to affect them in the future.
Yeah. And then it's also where I think I made some mistakes. But at least my kids spoke out, because when, I had my type A first child who just did it, everything right, pretty much. They would say, when I would say stuff like, well, Ryan did this, or, whatever, they go, Mom, we're not Ryan.
Yeah.
We're not Ryan. We're not like him.
Yeah.
So don't expect us to be. We're different than he is.
Yeah.
We're not going to do the same things he does. And I was, because we had a fairly good relationship, they were able to say that to me. And it made me go, you're right. You're right. And I shouldn't expect that, because you weren't. You were you. And you're going to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's another good thing. My daughter had to say it to me. And but for every parent to remember that your children are not alike. They're individuals. When I had one, right? Then the next one comes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's so different from his brother. And then I thought, well, I'm gonna have a third child, and they're gonna gotta be like one of the other two. Oh no, totally different. So, and they're not a mini me. They're so different than me in so many ways. Their dad, we have to remember we're all individuals, and we have this, our children are given to us, but they're a unique human being in themselves. We're the vehicle for them to get here.
Yeah. And it's also making me think about something that, the whole idea of like guiding them and influencing them in a positive way. And by the way, this is coming from my perspective. I'm not a parent, so I'm not in your shoes, and I try and put myself there to understand and to be able to communicate in the best way possible. So you can
That's why
take
we're both
this,
here.
yeah, you can take this, you don't have to take this, but it's fine. But a mentor of mine, we were having a conversation, and he was saying that when it comes to influencing anyone, you don't tell someone what they should do or how they should be. You should lead by example. So you
Mm,
should prove it to them, prove to them that it works, and then they'll follow.
mhm.
And I'm sure that applies to parenting, because if you're showing up a certain way and your kid resonates with that, then they'll show up that way as well,
Mhm.
right? It's almost like it's impossible to get someone who smokes a packet of cigarettes every single day and then who goes up to someone and says, smoking is bad for you, or someone else is smoking and say you should stop, you should quit smoking. That doesn't make sense. You don't have any credibility there,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So you have to, you almost just have to show. You have to show up. You have to show up as yourself authentically and live what you preach, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's
Exactly.
super important too, because then otherwise it's not gonna connect,
Right.
right? If
Mhm.
if for whatever reason, let's just, if I were to give an example, if my mom were to tell me stop eating junk food, right? Or junk food's not good for you. But then every single night, like she's just eating like packets and packets of chips and drinking pop and all that stuff. That won't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you know,
Right.
and that's a very extreme example, obviously, but I hope I'm sending home
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sending it home. I hope I'm making sense here. But yeah.
Yeah. I've always told my kids, because what's important to me is being kind to others, Um, and in fact, I've said it a million times to them. It's like, if anybody's being mean to you, just kill them with kindness, because they don't know what to do
Mm,
with it. Um, but I've demonstrated, and they've seen me, because I live what I preach. Is
preach.
like,
Yeah.
um, I am pretty much kind to everybody, and I
Yeah.
go out of my way to be kind, maybe sometimes too much,
Mm,
but they, all three of them, are extremely kind to others.
yeah.
And it's because of, well, because of their hearts, but also because I set an example that that's how you treat people,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And when I first met your younger son, so the middle child, right? When
Mhm.
I first like met him and we were talking and everything, it was actually during the 10-day challenge. He mentioned exactly what you just said, kill him with kindness.
Mhm.
When he was interacting with one of the teenagers and giving advice, that's exactly what he said. So right there, I just connected the dots. Like he literally, it has stuck with him because he's seen it through you, and that
Yeah.
just makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, live what you preach, and then that's the best control you can have. If
for
you want
sure.
to, I mean, it's because, yeah, the whole it does not
Mm,
work.
yeah,
Mm-mm. So,
yeah. You have to find a mold that fits.
yes. So, that's the healthy way to do it, because
Mm,
the other way is not healthy. It just hurts, and it hurts your relationship. It hurts them, because it makes them feel like, why don't you trust me to
yeah,
make good decisions? And, you know, so that,
yeah. And I think there's a period early on where you have to make decisions for them,
oh, of course.
but there does come a time when they're ready. They're
Yeah.
ready to be trusted.
I heard this one
And
thing from a researcher, and he said, imagine you have your kids for 18 years, right?
mhm,
So take 18. And so when they are one, they're going to make 1/18 of their decisions.
mm,
You're going to make 17/18, right? When they're 12, they're going to make 12/18 of their decisions. And you're going to make 6/18.
yeah,
And that way, it's just, they're starting to grow, and they're starting to learn, they're starting to be able to do that. And I thought that
mhm,
was a really good way to put it, because you know, the decisions when they're young, the decisions you can, do you want peanut butter and jelly, or do you want this? Give them decisions of
Yeah.
let them do the decisions that aren't going to hurt them,
Yeah.
And then as they grow older, because based on the decisions they did when they were younger that didn't hurt them, or did, but not badly, just consequence, then they start to learn how to make decisions going forward.
Yeah.
And so by the time they're 18, they're making all their decisions, and you're not.
Yeah.
And hopefully they've learned. So I just thought that was a really good way to.
Yeah, it is.
Put it in
And
perspective.
I think it makes sense too.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay.
Awesome. Woo! Thank you guys.
Alrighty.
Thank you for watching, for tuning in. Leave a comment if you have any questions, or share your feedback as well. Let us know how you're enjoying these podcasts. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you next week. If you want to reach out to us and connect with us, you can on social media.
Yeah.
And everything's going to be in
by
the
email.
description. Yeah.
Susan at fireflyquest.com.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what it is you would like us to talk about. We're probably going to bring some guests on at some point here. We were just talking about that, and we're excited. We're excited to bring other voices. Yeah,
that's going to be fun. I think it's going to change things up a little bit, give different perspectives and different stories as well, and just also give I think give the people who are watching and listening also like different stories when it comes to our lives as well, because we're thinking about bringing on guests that are close to us for now to start off with. And when Susan and I are sharing our stories, they're coming from our perspectives and our point of view, but it'll be interesting to see what everyone else has to say about my upbringing, and maybe if we get one of your kids on, and to see how you were as a mother, because I'm sure there are a lot of things that'll be revealed there. But no, I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be great. And yeah, there's a lot to come in the future, so just stay tuned.
Yeah, so I've got 3 kids. If they're willing to come on at some point, I might find out that maybe I wasn't as good prepared as I thought.
Yeah. This whole podcast just loses all credibility now. No, I'm sure you've done a good job, Susan. You've done a good job.
All right.
All right. Take care, everyone. We love you all.
See you in a week, and have a beautiful week, and try to really connect with your team.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys. Take care.
Bye.